1960s, after the freedom rides and the marches, I could not understand why Martin Luther King Jr. and others were still protesting and being arrested. I thought they had achieved all their goals of civil rights. They had that they had initially wanted. After all, they could then ride the buses and eat at all the restaurants. That's what I thought was their goal. Then I read a letter from a Birmingham jail, which was written by Dr. King when he was incarcerated in Alabama. Dr. King had received a letter from a small white girl who asked the same question I had been asking myself. In his letter, Dr. King wrote, "Some laws, by their very nature, must be broken because they're wrong." Another book I wish you'd all read is a book written by Alan Paton, Cry, Beloved Country. He wrote, "It is the job of judges to do justice. It is the work of the people to be just." In 1994, my grandson, Christopher, was born. I am positive that my daughter was unsure how we would receive the birth of an African-American child. The moment she placed that child in my hand, this book was written. From the beginning to the end, I knew every word that was going to be in it. I went home that night and literally locked myself in my room for 10 days so I could write this book. I didn't want people to see me cry. There were nights when I was writing that book, I had painted myself into a corner. I did not know what would happen next. The next morning, the words and the deeds were there in front of me, waiting. In the book, The Call of Love, you'll see many of the circumstances I have discussed prior. You might say that destiny had me writing The Call of Love all my life. And The Call of Love is the story of a grandfather who lived in North Carolina and whose family had been involved in the KKK for over 100 years, as mine has been. The old man had a daughter who had married a local man and had a blonde, blue-eyed daughter. Her first husband had died in an auto accident, and she was content to raise her daughter alone until she met and married an African-American soldier who later was killed in Operation Desert Storm in Iraq. When Estella learned that her husband's death, she passed out and went to a military hospital. There she found out she was pregnant and that she was dying. Estella contacted her father and asked if she could come home. She told him of her medical condition and asked that he and his wife, her mother, raise her son when she died. Think of that in its historical context. In order to raise that African-American child, he would have to turn his back on everything he had ever believed. And he did. The father found himself fighting his friends, his family, the KKK, and he was almost exhausted when he found an unexpected ally, the parents of the father of his grandson. It turned out that the paternal grandfather was just as racist as Estella's father. And this is an important point in this book. No race has a monopoly on racism. The two families, along with help from the FBI, managed to defeat the KKK and reestablish the grandfather's relationship with his neighbors. But There's a secret, and it remind me to give it to you. There's a secret in the book. Only one person has ever figured it out. And she had been born in a country with a race history far worse than ours. Now, Miss Sutherland, when I give this to you, you can open it up March the 31st. I want everybody to have time to try to figure out what the secret is. It has been almost 50, it's been more than 50 years now since I graduated from high school. This nation has come a long way in those 50 years, and now we have our first African-American president. And with this new burst in hope, for change, we have a new challenge for you. The acceptance of a black man as president requires each of you to build on this new level of racial acceptance and lift the mantle of democracy even higher. America has always represented hope for the world. We are on the verge of moving hope a little closer to reality. There are no magic erasers to wipe out the mistakes of our past. We must accept our responsibilities for the indignities that we have inflicted on others. To deny our history is to distort who we were, who we are, and who we wish to be. We are, by our very nature, racist. Racism is a disease, and never in the history of the world has a disease been eradicated by ignoring or denying its existence. Racism eats away at the very soul of each individual and their nation. We must live together, work together, and if need be, fight and die together to defend this nation and the principles it represents. In an interview, a reporter asked me, "I'm surprised that you're not racist." I looked at him and smiled and said, "Of course I'm a racist. I was born in a nation that decimated the red race, enslaved the black race, and during the Cold War almost destroyed the human race. But every day of my life, I make a conscious decision that I choose not to be a racist, because that is not what I want to be." Each of you will have to make a similar decision. I hope you'll find the time to read The Call of Love, because in the final analysis, young men and young women, in the final analysis, The Call of Love was written for you.